Hey everyone, coming to you a day late because of our holiday here in the US, but it's great to be back for another Ask Amy nonetheless. I have a question today from Rose, and it's a question that Rose sent me quite a while ago, so I apologize, Rose, that it's been on the list for a while. But I've recently had a couple really similar questions come through, and so I thought it was the perfect time to address it now. So let me read your question, Rose, if I can find it here. So Rose says, "Hi, Dr. Amy. I love your videos. Thanks so much for sharing them. I wondered what your thoughts were on depression and anxiety and the use of antidepressants. Do these help? Or are they pointless if you can start dismissing thoughts as mindless junk? Does depression exist, or is it just our thinking?" So these are really great questions, Rose. And I want to start with the last one. Does depression exist, or is it just our thinking? Yes. Yes and yes. So first, let me say, don't listen to this as me saying like this is the way it is. Just see if you can kind of listen to this new paradigm, this other way of viewing mental health and mental issues like depression, psychological issues like depression that we face, and just see, what you hear in it. See what resonates with you. So don't, even though I am a psychologist and I am a professional and I share this in a professional way, I'm not just some person off the street, sharing my own experience. I share this from a professional standpoint. That doesn't mean that the words are it. Like, it doesn't mean I'm giving you a formula and you just listen to that and take it at face value and that's it. Everything I share around this understanding that I talk about, I want you to see if you can just listen to it kind of loosely and lightly and see what resonates with you, because that's how I came to see something about this. And I think that's how many people come to actually see something about this that's helpful for them. So if I were to say, just making this up, if I were to say, no, depression doesn't exist, there's no such thing as depression, end of video, I'm guessing that would probably make more people feel, or as many people maybe feel upset and confused and hopeless and frustrated and like, well, hey, I'm depressed. What's going on with me then? Then it would be helpful to people. So it isn't about a yes or no, right or wrong, here's the way it is kind of response. It's about each of us hearing something through our own experience, in a way where it can hit us in more of a personal way that just makes sense and feels right to us. And it isn't about like there's an answer and here it is. So I hope that makes sense. So your last question, Rose, does depression exist, or is it just our thinking? Depression exists. The experience of depression absolutely exists, right? I mean, people feel depressed and they're not just feeling sorry for themselves. They're not just making this up, and they're not doing that to themselves. I would never, ever, ever suggest that. No one wants to feel depressed. It's not our nature to not feel well. So without all the double negatives, it is our nature to feel well. It is in our nature to just be in the moment and be light and free and be in life in a nice, easy way. So absolutely, people feel depressed. People have the experience of being depressed. Sometimes everyone has the experience, I would guess, of feeling depressed for moments. And some people have the experience of feeling depressed for days or weeks or months or even years. So it's an absolutely real experience. And then you say, or is it just our thinking? And I wouldn't say or, but and the experience of depression, which is a totally real experience, comes to us through thinking. It comes to us through thought, say it that way. It comes to us through the energy that brings all experience to life for us, which is what we call thought, this energy of thought. So it's at this psychological level. When you take away the psychology, when you quiet your mind, even someone who says that they've been feeling depressed for decades, if you got that person, if they were kind of beyond their psychology, if their mind was really peaceful and quiet and at ease, their depression would feel very, very different for them. It would it would not be the same experience, because that experience of depression, as real as it is, as real as it feels for us, it is brought through psychology. It is brought through thought. And so it's kind of a yes and yes. Does depression exist? Sure, people feel it, no question. And is it just our thinking? It's not just our thinking, but it's brought through thought. It is a feeling and thought that's brought through our thinking, yes. And the important piece in this, I think, is that beyond our psychology, beyond thought, before thought, I don't see or believe that people are depressed, like as a person. So you aren't a depressed person. You may have been depressed for decades, but that depression is coming at the level of your psychology, and there is more to all people than the level of our psychology. So we just want to start to get kind of curious about what's there before the depression. And I don't mean before as in like your depression started in 2001, what was there before? I mean right now, in perhaps a huge, vivid, real experience of depression, what's beneath that? What's there? Because there is a part of us that is untouched by anything we feel, and that is always well, and that is there before and beyond what we're feeling in any given moment. And that's where we want to start to look. And I can say that because, again, if we just get curious, if we just look and see, wow, this thing that we call depression, it comes and goes. It isn't just this constant blanket. Now, it might feel like it's been there as a constant blanket for a long time, but it has ups and downs, it waxes and wanes. It moves around a little bit. And pretty much every depressed person I've talked to, a person who says, I'm depressed and I have been for a really long time, and they feel like this is them and this is their life, I think every single one of them would say and have said that there are moments when they aren't depressed. Not as many as when they are, perhaps, but they have moments when they are depressed. So we want to start to get curious about that. Well, how is that possible? If you're a depressed person and this is who you are and it's in your brain and it's just the way it is, what's going on when you don't feel that way? And we're just so used to looking to kind of affirm what we're looking for. We're looking at the presence of depression. We want to start to look toward the presence of freedom from depression. What's going on when there's an absence of depression? It's a lot harder to see an absence sometimes than it is the presence of something. But to kind of flip that and start getting curious about that really, really starts to change how people see their own experience even. I've shared this many times. This was my experience with anxiety. I was so anxious for what felt like a super long time. I mean, really, when I could look back, I said I've been anxious my whole life. Of course, that wasn't true. It definitely wasn't true that I was anxious in every moment of my whole life. But, feelings of anxiety and then me owning them had been there for most of my life. And then in a period of time in my 20s, I felt anxious almost all the time. And so that was all I could see. I had people telling me, you're anxious. You have these diagnoses. You have these labels. This is your issue. This is who you are. This is something you'll always have to cope with. And so all I could see was the presence of it. And when it would go away, because it would, there were moments when I wasn't anxious. Even in that really, really horrible time of my life, there were moments when I was fine. I dismissed them. I didn't even notice them. I just took them for granted. I just brushed it away. And if anything, I thought, okay, I don't know, I'm getting some kind of break right now, but who I am, that anxiety, it's coming right back. So it's so easy to see the presence of something, especially the presence of something that we believe in and that we identify with and that we see as a real thing and a stable thing. Of course, our mind is only going to find the affirmation, like be able to affirm those beliefs. But if we can flip that and start to look for the absence and start to get curious about what's there beneath it, we start to see more and more of that. And it isn't about denying anything. It's just like, hey, if we're going to look at this, let's look at it all the way around. And you start to see more of the other side. And it starts to open your mind around this experience of I am this, I have this, and we start to see, no, I'm not that. And I don't have that, be it depression, anxiety, whatever it is we feel, is an experience that moves through us. And that starts to really change things for a lot of people, starts to loosen our grip on that. So Rose, you also ask about antidepressants. medication? You say, do these help? Or are they pointless if you can start dismissing thoughts as mindless junk? And again, you ask an or question, but I want to make it an and. Do they help? Yeah, they definitely help some people. They don't help. I don't know anything that helps everyone, but they absolutely help some people. I think, there's a big business around that. They'd be out of business if they didn't help. So whether we want to say, why they help and how they help, that's a bigger question. But do they help? Yeah, they sure seem to help. Or are they pointless if you can start dismissing thoughts as mindless junk? Well, yeah, that too. Like I've seen a lot of people be on anti-anxiety, anti-depression kind of medications, come to see something about their experience and leave those medications behind and see that they're feeling like when they feel depressed or they feel anxious, that's a feeling in a moment. It isn't who they are. It isn't necessarily something that they need to medicate. They can kind of feel that stuff move through them, know that that's not them, know that there's a resilient them that's always there and feel safer in that. And then thought and feeling kind of move through them in an easier way to where they don't really feel like they need the medication. Now, that's not everyone in every moment. And the thing is, that sounds like a great goal because as we know, no one wants to be on medication for your whole life. The medications, I think, are designed to be a short-term, get you over a hump sort of thing, or maybe they're not designed that way, but ideally that's what everyone I talk with wants them to be. That's what I wanted them to be, like, just get me through this and then I'll get off this stuff, because they have side effects and they're not something you want to be on forever. And, so it's nice to be able to know that you can do what you need to do when you need to do it. Like if you're in a place where you can't just, as you say, start dismissing thoughts as mindless junk, that doesn't feel real for you yet, you haven't seen that yet, then do what you need to do. There's no right or wrong. There's no shame in getting on something if that's what feels most helpful to you. And you don't need to run to it. There's no, you also don't need to do that. When you feel depressed or you feel anxious, you don't need the medication. So it's just as a rule, we don't need it. We can start to see this, but so for each of us individually, it's just makes sense to kind of look to your own common sense and say, hey, I'm doing the best I can do. What makes sense to me from what I see right now? What makes sense to me? And if it's being on a medication, fine. And then at some point, if it's getting off that medication, great. So again, it isn't like an or question as much as it's an and. We have someone in the Little School of Big Change right now. This comes up all the time, but just today, this came up of a woman who feels sort of afraid to be alone, has a lot of anxiety about being alone on her really large property, and there aren't going to be any neighbors or family members around, and she's going back and forth in her head, well, do I call in someone? People are going to be gone for a weekend, and do I call in someone? Do I do that? Do I not? And the thing that just kind of occurs to us is well, doesn't really matter. You'll do what you need to do. At the end of the day, whether you get on a medication for a short period of time, or for her, whether she calls in help so she's not alone versus tries to do it alone, it's not that big a deal. It's one weekend, it's one period in your life. It's we do the best we can do. And when we have that sort of attitude about it, that kind of stance, then what we do really doesn't matter so much, because we aren't putting so much meaning on it. We aren't saying, oh, I failed and I still have anxiety because I needed somebody to be here with me this weekend. No, it doesn't mean that at all. It doesn't mean anything about you. If you feel like right now an antidepressant or some kind of medication is best, it doesn't mean a thing. It's just a statement about how you feel and what your common sense is telling you in this very moment. And then we can just stay very fluid with that and let things update and change, because that's the way we're designed to work. We're always seeing more. And we're always seeing better and evolving and just getting more information. And when we don't lock ourselves into, I'm the kind of person who, or I have this issue, or I'm this or that, then we just get to see that change again so much more easily. It's kind of back to that conversation of just staying really loose and just seeing what shows up, rather than staring at an idea that we think applies and holding on to that. So I hope this kind of addresses your question, Rose. And, in general, for everyone, kind of just seeing if we can keep it at like, yes, there's real experience. We can't ever deny someone's experience. And let's get curious about what that experience is made of and how it works. And most of all, what's there before that experience, before our psychology, before what we're feeling, and what doesn't change, because that's what's there. There's an us there that doesn't change all the time, that's stable, that's been there forever, and that is really resilient. And that's kind of where we want to look. And it's hard to see that sometimes when the experience is really big. So we just want to know we're not going to see it all the time. But because it doesn't change, because it is constant, we can still come to know something about that and come to feel it more and more often. So thanks so much for sending your question, Rose. Again, sorry it took so long to get to. But I think this stuff comes up kind of in perfect timing when it needs to. So please send your questions. Anyone who has questions about anything around this new paradigm of psychology that I like to share, anything around change, how we can change in a deep way without willpower, ending habits, anxiety, addiction, anything you want to hear about, I'd love to talk about it. Send your questions to AskAmy at thelittleschoolofbigchange.com. And I'll see you back here next Monday. Thanks, guys.